Welcome back to the Champagne on Ice podcast presented by the Field of 68. And things just keep getting worse for Illinois as Illinois heads to the Kohl Center in Wisconsin, gets blown out. A major injury has now been added to the list of misfortune for this Illinois team, along with multiple more illnesses, multiple more guys leaving games, throwing up in the locker room. And, oh, by the way, Illinois is headed to play the number 3 team in the country and the number 1 team in the country on KenPom on Saturday night at 7 o'clock at Madison Square Garden on national television. So things are going very well for Illinois right now, I would say, with all that in mind. We'll talk about all of it here on this episode. I am Kyle Tausk, joined as always by Mike Farmer. Is there anything good that you can tell me about Illinois right now, Mike?
Brad Underwood said at his media thing today that Tommy was practicing first time in like a month. So yeah, that's about it though. There's that.
I mean, we're entering March here, and March is exciting. I still think it's going to be exciting to watch this team in March. Boy, they're limping into it though right now, and yeah, it's hard to find good news around here as the schedule just continues to ramp up, and Illinois is going to be as big an underdog as they've been in a game in some time on Saturday night against Duke. Definitely talk about that game later on. Talk a little about the Wisconsin game, the Wisconsin loss, 95-74 as well, and just a little bit about Illinois' NCAA tournament outlook as they've lost now 7 of their last 12 games, are sliding on the seed list, and just kind of discuss our overall confidence level and where this team is at and if there's any hope of turning this thing around. But I want to start with the major news that was shared on Monday before the Wisconsin game. As if this team wasn't snake-bitten enough, Morez Johnson, after that unbelievable two-handed block he had on Trey Holloman against Michigan State on Saturday, that was really the last exciting moment of that game before Illinois refused to score the rest of the way and limped their way out of there with a 14-point loss. Turns out he broke his wrist on that play, and he will be out indefinitely. And if you look up how long a broken wrist generally takes to heal, sounds like you will not be seeing Morez Johnson again this season for Illinois, at least definitely not until the NCAA tournament, I would imagine. So Illinois loses a key player, a guy who had been super consistent, a guy who had been the best rebounder on this team, one of the most consistent defensive players, had really come on here of late offensively with some bigger games, had 17 points in that Michigan State game, and now he will be out for extended time and probably for the rest of the season. So how big of a blow is that for this Illinois team that is already limping their way to the finish line?
Yeah, just a really bad blow in every way imaginable. Like start offensively, he was starting the past couple games before he got hurt with Tommy and the big lineup with Ben too. So then all of a sudden the double big lineup's gone and Tommy's hurt. Tommy's injured at the same time as well. And then defensively, he gives you so much, just an anchor down low in the paint. Rebounding gives you so much. Probably the best freshman rebounder in the country, one of the best offensive rebounders in the conference. And yeah, and then just the hustle every play, the heart. He's a guy that kind of defines what this program is, even though he played 25 games this season. And yeah, it sucks for the fans, sucks for the team. He's a fan favorite, a guy that every fan wanted to see. And because he just knew he would perform in every single game. He was one of the few guys that's not going to ghost you in one of every 3 games. He's going to show up, give you heart, give you hustle on every single play. And so now, yeah, Illinois is going to be without that for probably the rest of the season. And it sucks for like if we want to start talking about next year in terms of him coming back and like how things are going to be shaping up with next year's rotation and roster. Like you want your star freshman to be playing down the stretch in March, even if Illinois is not doing super well. You want him to get that experience and to continue to gel with some of these guys that are probably going to be back next year. And yeah, so now you don't have that. It really sucks in pretty much every way, as much of this season has been in the past couple months.
Yeah, it's a brutal blow because he was the one guy that you knew what you were going to get from every single night. This team is so inconsistent with a lot of young players who have had their ups and downs this year, and really Illinois' veteran guys have left a lot to be desired in a lot of games this year. Morez Johnson, yeah, he had his off games where the production wasn't there, but man, you knew you were getting the energy from him. You knew the motor that he was going to play with. You knew the defensive safety blanket that he was going to provide to you in the paint, and he was your one real rim protector who could use his athleticism to really change some shots, block some shots. The play he got hurt on is the epitome of Morez Johnson. He's all the way at the baseline going for an offensive rebound. Michigan State gets a run out. He runs the entire floor to make a two-handed block on a fast break. He's a guy who could do that for you, and I thought he was making some real strides offensively in terms of his finishing around the rim. His free throw shooting had improved, and he was getting to the free throw line more. He was just making such an impact, getting better and better, and was just such a consistent piece. And Brad Underwood had finally started him for a while, and I thought that the results of that were mostly good. Him and Tommy had found a nice little rhythm together. Illinois was going to lean all in on size and physicality down low in terms of rebounding. I think that's where you're really going to feel it. Let's face it, maybe the biggest strength of this Illinois team is their rebounding ability, particularly their offensive rebounding ability. You just lost your best one. I don't know how you maintain that same level on the glass without him. As much as you can try to say, well, every guy's got to give effort and we still got Tommy down there, you're just not going to be the same level of rebounding team without him. And that's the one thing Illinois could always fall back on, even with their bad three-point shooting, was, well, Morez will get 4 of them back. Now he's not going to be able to do that. And that really hurts for this team. So I think that's a really tough loss. And a guy that again, like you said, I just wanted to see more of. I wanted to see continued growth, even if this Illinois season was still not going to end in a very positive manner. And look, I don't necessarily think that Morez was going to be like the biggest difference maker ever of like, well, he's going to be the reason Illinois doesn't make the Sweet 16. Now, I don't think in the grand scheme of things he changes Illinois' ceiling a ton, but I would have just continued to like to see him improve and grow and build some momentum heading into next year. And like you said, that experience part of it. But I think they are going to miss him in a lot of different areas. And for a team that already is really going through it right now, to just lose that emotional energy type of presence on the floor, I think that's going to be really tough to make up for, and I'm interested to see if Illinois can survive on the glass, can survive physically, and I mean, just short term, Saturday night against Cooper Flagg, Morez Johnson was probably the guy you're sticking on him. He's gone. Who the heck else is there? I mean, so it's Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf of Michigan in a couple weeks. You're really going to be hurting with only one big there with Tommy. The depth is a real problem now in the front court. So it's just a really tough loss.
Yeah, that's the brutal part of it too. Tommy's been in and out of it for the past month. Ben's been kind of inconsistent, and he doesn't give you a ton defensively. And that's pretty much it. That's everybody over 6'7", 6'8". So yeah, with the 2 bigs from Michigan, you got Duke in 2 days. It's not going to be too fun. But just Morez gives you everything. Even as you said, he's not going to raise your ceiling a ton. He's not going to might not win you a game and get you to the second weekend, but like you still want that guy in your top 6, top 5 guys in the rotation. You're not going to get rid of him. And then it's just the rebounding is definitely going to be an issue. Not even talking about the 2 teams we're going to play with bigs in Michigan and Duke, but Purdue and Iowa, these teams just in general in the tournaments. I mean, whatever. Yeah, like you said, Jake Davis is going to fly in and get a rebound here and there. Ben's going to do it. But overall, for the 40 minutes and the 25 minutes that Morez would have played in the game, he raises that ceiling in terms of rebounding. And that's where Illinois was at their best, like you said, with missing threes and then just being so solid defensively. We've seen a fall off in their defense, as we talked about last episode. Not a top 100 defense over the past month. But Morez was the anchor down there. He was stopping the opposing team's low post players. He was just a really solid rebounder, flying in and grabbing everything, boxing out when other guys weren't boxing out. And now you're without that. So that moves Ben Hummerkaus back up in the lineup to play the 4 a little bit more. That moves Jake Davis and Trey White up. Now they're probably out of position a little bit more than they would have been if Morez was still healthy. So yeah, it just everything changes now. And Illinois, they're not getting used to it, but this has happened a lot where this guy's out of the rotation, this guy's practicing, and then all of a sudden he's not starting. This guy was going to start, then he's not practicing for the next week. So Illinois is kind of, I mean, they haven't adapted super well, but they should be getting used to this type of thing by now because this is all that's been happening for the past couple months, really since that West Coast trip with Oregon and Washington. So yeah, it just keeps happening, and Morez is the next domino that falls. We hope there's not another one, but with the way things are going, there very well could be.
Yeah, and this is like the longer term one that's finally hit. It's been a bunch of short term, just turmoil, whether it's, KJ misses a couple games, Tommy misses a couple games, guys sick, guys out of the rotation, back in the rotation. This one is actually like the final month of the season, you're going to be without a guy. So, yeah, it's been a lot of bad luck for this Illinois team. Doesn't excuse some of the things that have happened on the floor, doesn't excuse a lot of the losses they've had. And ultimately, I think this season was going to be one that saw some underachieving things regardless of what, the health situation looked like. But man, since that West Coast trip, there has barely been a time where Illinois has had everybody full go, healthy, together, and established for more than a game. And it's just so hard for you to build any type of consistency with that. And it feels like that's going to be a big story of this season. And it's frustrating because you just felt like the ceiling was so high and things were starting to click, roles were starting to get defined. Guys just knew what they were supposed to do and were getting comfortable and settled into a certain spot. And then Kasparis goes out. And then Kasparis comes back. Tommy gets mono. Trey White and DGL get sick, and all of a sudden they're out of the rotation for 3 games because Brad Underwood finds something he likes, and now they're back in the rotation. And, now you lose more guys, and Tommy can't start against Wisconsin. Now Morez is out for a long time. It's just been all kinds of trouble with the illnesses and guys in and out, and Brad Underwood has continued to talk about it. And look, I understand a lot of the people that are like, well, can Brad Underwood stop giving the same excuse every time? There is an aspect to like a lot of the play that Illinois had and a lot of individuals that haven't played up to par has nothing to do with the illnesses and all that stuff. But as a team, I think a big story of this season is just going to be the fact that they were so snake bitten. They ran into some bad luck here and they could never just build this thing into what it was supposed to be because you never actually had everybody fully available and playing together and getting comfortable together and just continuing to grow as a team since mid-January. And that's just been a frustrating watch and frustrating to keep up with the constant, well, this guy's sick now. This guy won't play now. This guy's got 3 minutes tonight. He wasn't feeling well. It's just so hard to have success when that's going on.
One of the forgotten things about Illinois basketball in general, 3 years ago, that team with Trent and DeMonte, Plummer, Kofi, those guys, they win the Big Ten, and then all of a sudden everybody's sick. I think Jacob Grandison's like shoulder was torn or something, and that team stumbled into the Big Ten tournament, loses to Indiana, goes down 20 against Chattanooga, pulls that one out, and then just kind of gets dominated by Houston. Like that type of stuff, the sicknesses. One role player's hurt, another guy's dealing with something. I think Curbelo had concussions the whole year. Kofi might have had a concussion that year, something like that. I mean, that stuff when it adds up, like the team as a whole gets so out of rhythm. And that team was a veteran-led team. This team is 11 guys that have never played with each other. They're led by 18-year-old freshmen. You got new assistant coaches. You got everything. And so yeah, I totally agree with you and a lot of the fans that say this wasn't Brad Underwood's best coaching job in a season at Illinois, but so much of this stuff was out of his control. Like I do think the roster construction and the way it was put together in the summer with the international guys, the transfers looked really good on paper. The freshmen looked really good on paper, all that. The shooting and like the offensive strategy, yeah, that sounded good. And I think it probably would have been good. Like you saw the Oregon game, you saw the Penn State game when everybody was healthy besides KJ. Even at Indiana, they looked phenomenal. But then the rest of the season, Kylan Boswell struggles here. Trey White's injured here. Will Riley's injured here. Tommy's been out for a month pretty much. Like it's just things have added up. And yeah, the results the past month haven't been super pretty. A lot of it has to do with the illnesses and the injuries. A lot of it has to do with, yeah, the team just didn't live up to expectations in general. But I don't, things could still change. Things, they come out, they shock the world and beat Duke. Not saying that's going to happen, but you start to get guys healthy in the final couple weeks of the season. I'm not saying it happens, but things could change real fast if I don't know a couple things go Illinois' way. But yeah, it's been a weird season really, and high expectations at the beginning, high expectations in the middle of the year, and yeah, things just have not gone to plan since then.
Well, I'm glad you went there at the end because we were starting to sound like the end of season episode. Like, well, the season's
Yeah.
over. It didn't work out. There's a lot of basketball still left. I would like to say right now, I am not fully giving up on Illinois. Illinois is probably still going to make the NCAA tournament, almost certainly, unless they lose out. And there's still a lot of talent. You got 2 first-round draft picks on this team. And other than Morez, hopefully you can put this illness stuff behind you and maybe have everybody else available and playing the rest of the regular season to try and build something and try to just get some consistency, find the right rotation heading into the Big Ten tournament and heading into the NCAA tournament where you never know what can happen. March Madness is called March Madness for a reason. There's always teams, whether it's a team that underachieved, was highly rated preseason, underachieved, but hey, they put it together in the tournament, or just these teams that have no business making the Elite Eight find their way there, or the Final Four like NC State last year. I'm still excited to watch the rest of this basketball play out, but I think some of this stuff, bigger picture, is worth talking about too, because it just feels like this Illinois season has not gone the way that you would have hoped and thought, and that's fair to say, and that's not really going to change regardless of what ends up happening here down the stretch, save for just completely, turning this regular season around. But you are going to probably have 12, 13 losses here by the end of the regular season, and that's going to be viewed as a massive disappointment for this team. But I agree with everything you said there. And I will just say, yeah, I think there's 2 sides of it. There's one in which I think the illnesses and all this injury stuff and all this snake-bitten nature of the way this team has played a huge factor. And I really would have loved to see if none of this happened and this team could have just kept building and kept building from that West Coast trip with none of this stuff happening, which is unrealistic. Every team goes through stuff. But I would have liked to see what that looked like. I also think that there were some misevaluations and mistakes made in this roster build that have proven out. Like the transfer class hasn't played like you thought they were going to. You build a team around freshmen, you know how that's going to go, right? You know KJ's going to have games like he had against Wisconsin, where he's just a disaster. You know Will Riley's probably not going to shoot 50% from 3 all year and go through a slump, and you know that there's going to be some fluctuation there. And that was a choice that Brad Underwood made. So it's two-sided. You're not just excusing this entire season by saying, well, they dealt with the flu bug. That's not accurate at all. It is part of the season. There's also some things that I think didn't work out the way that this coaching staff intended, and that's probably going to ultimately continue here for the end of the season, barring a pretty miraculous turnaround. But again, March Madness is March Madness. I'm still excited to see what happens, and we're getting close to it.
Yeah, for sure. It's I think 2 weeks till conference tournament starts. That's unbelievable. But yeah, the thing with the transfers, I think that's you can look at the freshmen. I don't want to blame freshmen for, a season not turning out the way it was supposed to turn out, even if they're, top 20 recruits and they're going to be lottery picks. I don't really want to go there. And I also don't want to just spend the episode blaming Ben Hummerkaus for not being the guy that, people expected him to be in the transfer portal. But yeah, like you wish Kylan Boswell didn't shoot 24% from three. Because considering he shot 36 or 38, whatever he did at Arizona, like it's just weird that that happened. And you can point to the injuries, illnesses, just things being different, transferring from a totally different school on the West Coast. Like, yeah, things change. You might not have the best year. But like that just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Ben Hummerkaus going from first option and shooting over 40% to going from fourth, fifth, sixth option and shooting like 34%. It's weird. And with the other guys like Trey White, I didn't have crazy expectations for, but when you're starting the first 20 games of the year and then all of a sudden, yeah, if you do get sick, yeah, get some time to recover. but then you get like four DNPs in a row and you come back at Wisconsin. Obviously, he's not going to have the best game of his career. And yeah, he didn't look great against Wisconsin. So yeah, it's weird. It's a lot of things haven't worked out the way that the staff expected them to. And we keep mentioning it, but the illnesses, the sicknesses, the injuries here and there, it's all kind of compiled into what's just become a weird past couple 2 months. And yeah, I think just the most disappointing thing is, you go back to media day and the summer and workout stuff, like the whole staff is saying, the fans are saying, wait till March, see what this team is. Probably not going to peak in November and December, just let them kind of ride it out, see what happens during Big Ten play. Don't put a ton of stock into every single individual result here and there. Kind of let's just see how they're doing in March when the tournaments roll around. And you would have loved to see that if the past 2 months hadn't been what the 2 months have been based on the sicknesses and guys missing games here and there. And yeah, the thing is, we'll never really get to know unless in the next 4 or 5 games they do totally flip it around, which is obviously highly unlikely. But as you said, it's March or soon to be March, and crazier things have happened. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm not in the position I was in 2 years ago where I wanted the season to end as soon as March rolled around because that team was really not fun to watch. I just didn't love a lot of the stuff going on with just the story regarding that team that year. This year, things haven't worked out. I still love KJ. KJ, I mean, people on Illinois Twitter saying, yeah, KJ, you should come back for another year. He's not cut out to be a lottery pick.
Not happening.
Come on, man. Yeah, Will Riley, yeah, he's not good enough. Come on. Like those guys are going to be gone. I still love watching them play. Tommy's a phenomenal player to watch when he's healthy. Even Kylan's really good when he's on. When Trey White's on, he's really good. When Hummerkaus is on, he's a really good piece, a fun shooter to watch. But yeah, things just like all that stuff hasn't happened in the same game since Oregon, and that was a month and a half ago. So kind of been saying the same story for a while, but that's what it's come down to.
Yeah, let's touch on the Wisconsin game briefly. I mean, there's not a ton to say about this game. Tomislav Ivicic was questionable, was sick, drove up separately, didn't start the game, looked terrible when he played the game. Jake Davis starts. That tells you where Illinois was at, but then he leaves 8 minutes in, throws up in the locker room, doesn't come back out. Trey White goes from DNPs for 3 straight games to starting, and DGL goes from 3 minutes and 0 minutes to 25 minutes. Actually was fantastic. But it just, again, it was another situation where it just felt like Illinois was all disjointed. Brad Underwood doesn't even shake hands with Wisconsin after the game, says we're just so hit hard with this illness thing. Let's not even do this. It just felt like a night that was doomed from the start, even going in. I mean, even if you were fully healthy, we saw what that looked like. Fully healthy minus Morez, obviously. Saw what that looked like at the end of Michigan State. Vibes got to an all-time low. Wisconsin's playing incredible basketball, and they were awesome on Tuesday night. That offense is going to be really hard to stop for any team. John Tanji goes for 31. Stephen Crowell hits 3 threes. I don't know what you do with that if you're Illinois. And it just felt like from the opening tip, Illinois hung in there for a while. Will Riley and DGL were good early in the game to kind of keep Illinois in it and get it to 6 points at halftime. KJ was an utter disaster. Worst game I've seen him play. 7 turnovers, 0 assists. You're never going to win when he does that. It was just a night that felt inevitable as soon as you started watching it unfold that Wisconsin was probably going to pull away and pretty handily beat Illinois. So any lasting thoughts from that game from you?
I mean, not really. Like Wisconsin was due for like big picture. Wisconsin due for a win. They're at home against a team they haven't beaten in 4 or 5 years, and then Illinois on the flip side, just a dead team pretty much. But yeah, Tanji, he got what he wanted. Blackwell got what he wanted. Crowell took advantage of our bigs kind of being non-existent in this one, and yeah, it led to Wisconsin scoring 95 points. Illinois has given up 90 points 3 times this year. Alabama and Maryland were the other two, and yeah, Wisconsin just. I think offensively, as you said, a lot of teams are going to have a really tough time stopping that team. Like they just, as Brady came on and said in our last podcast, every single time or like every single rotation they have 5 shooters on the floor. So you better be ready to guard every single one of them. They showcased that against Illinois, shooting 42% from 3. And then, yeah, with Illinois offensively, which has been the big talking point for 2 months, KJ, KJ was miserable. And again, I don't want to blame freshmen, so I'm not really going to blame him. He had one of those nights. Like, just the turnovers were horrendous, and he just didn't have he had nothing offensively. I thought the veterans minus Trey White were actually pretty good. I've been, I've criticized them a pretty fair amount this season. I thought Boswell was really good. I thought Hummerkaus was doing like what a veteran fourth year or fifth year player should be doing.
Boswell had a great
Tommy,
first half, was awful in the second, but his first half
yeah,
was one of the reasons Illinois was in it.
I threw the second half out because once we got to like the 10-minute mark, Illinois was, I mean, they were toast. But yeah, the first half they stuck around, like kind of trading blow for blow with Wisconsin. And then the second half kind of ran out of gas. Dre took over a little bit, was doing what he could do for his first minutes in like 2 weeks, which was unbelievable. And I don't know, like that was about it. Will Riley did a little bit of his thing. Kerry Booth came in and chucked up a horrendous shot. Jake Davis was decent actually offensively in his first couple minutes when he was out there.
Flu
And
game,
then
hit
yeah,
two
obviously he
threes.
just died after 8 minutes. But yeah, there's just really not a whole lot to say about that one. You end up losing by 21 points. You had like six rotation players playing pretty much. So I don't know. That's all I've got.
Here's the one question I have coming off that game. How concerned are you about KJ heading into the stretch run of the season? Because that was just a game where, boy, the turnovers were awful. They were totally self-induced. I mean, Wisconsin's not a defense that turns you over. It's not like they had a bunch of physical guys, up in his grill. Just threw the basketball away. And some of them looked like miscommunications, or the guy's supposed to pop here, he cuts here. Like, part of that's going to be, well, who the heck is playing for me? Because we've had 80 different lineups here, and you can excuse some of that. But he just was bad. He's also had one assist his last two games. His last three halves have been really poor. Was really bad in the second half against Michigan State. Just wasn't creating anything. He's a guy that has so much on his shoulders on this Illinois offense. Are you concerned at all about him still being like the guy for Illinois offensively down the stretch? Or do you feel like it would serve Illinois right to maybe take some things off his shoulders in terms of just the ball handling and playmaking duties?
Could take a little bit off maybe, but I think you're in real trouble if all of a sudden it's mid-February and you decide
Right.
your presumed top 10 pick is no longer the guy. We're going to have Boswell or Dre running the offense effectively for 40 minutes. Like, I don't think that's realistic. I don't want to see that happen. And yeah, the turnovers have been the big talking point with KJ the whole year. He's gone ghost in a couple games in terms of scoring and just distributing the ball, but in general, like 2 games ago, he's putting up 24 points and whatever else against UCLA. People are so quick to forget that because, okay, obviously this Wisconsin game was horrendous from KJ, like just really, really bad in all aspects. But it's an 18-year-old. Like 2 games ago, or yeah, I think it was Minnesota and UCLA. He had 24 points, combined like 15 rebounds and 10 assists or something like that. And yeah, it's like you can't give up on that. Maybe yeah, take a little bit of pressure off his shoulders. And I mean, just by having your rotation players healthy, I think that would happen, which has not happened the past couple months. But yeah, I think some of the turnovers were he's in his own head. He's trying to do too much, I guess. I think I would like to see him get back to more of the pick and roll and like trying to find guys in corners and finding the in rhythm threes that we've talked so much about. I feel like he's been in his head trying to create a little bit too much for himself, and with the step back threes that he takes, I feel like he's not getting to the rim as much and trying to finish like he had been earlier in the year. And a big part of that is not having Tommy healthy, and like that pick and roll and pick and pop hasn't been there as much as it was in the winter months in November and December. But yeah, it's like you can't give up on this guy. It looked terrible against Wisconsin. He very well could look terrible against Duke. But yeah, it's like if Illinois wants to play their best and maybe win a tournament game in the Big Ten tournament or NCAA tournament, you're going to need this guy to be playing 30 plus minutes. And that's pretty much my piece.
Yeah, I mean the minutes thing is not at all like, yeah, he's still going to be one of
Yeah,
your highest minutes guys and your highest usage guy. That's still going to happen. That still should happen, and I think he'll be just fine and have some big games here down the stretch of the season. I just think you're starting to see him wear down a little bit with as much as Illinois has asked of him as a lead guard, as a playmaker, and just as a guy that is the number one and really only engine of Illinois' offense a lot of times during games. I just think right now he's fighting it a little bit. And I think it would serve him and the team well to just maybe take some of that off of his plate in the form of maybe playing him off the ball a little bit more, mix it in a little bit so that it's not him every time down having the burden of getting Illinois into offense. Maybe you space him out a few times, put the ball in Will Riley's hands and let him create a little bit, because boy, has he taken a step forward here over the last month as a decision maker, making plays with the ball in his hands. The only reason Illinois had a fighter's chance entering the second half against Wisconsin was because Will Riley, the last 8 minutes of the half, took the ball and made plays for Illinois, whether that was scoring it or passing it. And I would like to maybe see a little bit more of Will on the ball, KJ off the ball. I don't necessarily know if my answer is more Kylan on the ball, because that hasn't gone great here of late. I'd like to see him play a little bit better, make some better decisions. But I just think just find ways to take some of that load off of KJ, make life a little bit easier for him, maybe generate a couple shots for him to get some confidence back, as opposed to him having to create every single one of his shots himself. I think you have the guys to do that. And the other thing I'd throw in, and it somewhat related to this, somewhat just a side note, I think this game showed that Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn should not be playing under 20 minutes in any game the rest of the season. Really shouldn't probably be playing more than that, because that guy has he's such a steadying presence for Illinois as an energy bringer off the bench. I think he should start the rest of the year, but if you're going to bring him off the bench, and the scoring step that he's taken here when he's been healthy, I think is going to be vital for this team, because KJ, teams have KJ really well scouted right now. He's struggled with his efficiency from the floor. Will can only do so much for you from a scoring perspective. You know, if you're not getting good shooting from Kylan, if you're getting up and down shooting from Rickhouse, if White isn't going to be that 20-point-a-game guy, you need a guy who can go get you one. And Trey Gibbs-Lawhorn did that in the second half against Wisconsin. And I just love the tenacity he plays with. I mean, we talk about it all the time, but he's just one of those guys you love rooting for when he steps on the floor, because it's just instant energy. He has an edge about him that I think some guys on this team lack at times, that you know you're always going to get. And I don't know what exactly the circumstances were for why he fell out. It sounded more just like, well, you know, he was sick, and that's why he missed the Minnesota game. He was still under the weather for UCLA. Illinois played so well those two games that then Michigan State, Underwood just kind of wanted to stick with what happened. I think after Wisconsin, Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn should be playing a lot of minutes for this team. And if that helps take some things off KJ too, just because you got another guy who can go score and you can ask to make things happen, great. But just in general, I'd like to see a lot of that guy down the stretch of the year.
No question about it. I'm 100% with you. Yeah, the benching, or I don't know if you want to call it a benching, but just the lack of his minutes the past couple weeks, really confusing, even if he was a little sick, I guess. But yeah, just spark plug, has that chip on his shoulder offensively and defensively. Like, you know, he scores a bucket, he runs down the floor, he's mean mugging the dude that he just scored on, he's going to slap the floor. Like, that's the stuff Illinois needs, because I don't know if Illinois' quote unquote leaders and like energy guys have really brought it a ton this year. He's been the guy that's brought it along with Morez when he was playing. So yeah, I think I don't really care if he starts. You know, he's going to be getting his minutes off the bench even if he's not starting. But yeah, 20 minutes a game, that has to be the necessity. Because against Wisconsin, he actually hit his threes, and you saw how good he was when he hit his threes. Because then that really opens up him getting to the lane and getting fouled and doing all that type of stuff. So that's a guy I want to see playing 20 minutes a game the rest of the night. And that's a guy I want to see next year on this team. Like, I know Morez is the guy that a lot of fans are like, do everything you can to get this guy back in Champaign for year two. I want Dre, like, of course, I agree with that with Morez, but Dre has to be like, I think it's 1A, 1B. Dre off the bench this year, and then Dre starting next year is like, he's going to be a double-digit scorer so easily. If he gets the three-point game figured out just a little bit, he has the driving game, he has the defensive game, obviously. He doesn't have to be much of a creator for other people, like depending on how the roster shapes up next year. But just that scoring, you don't see that much from like a 6'1" guard. He is so explosive. And then, yeah, I really think it just comes down to his energy and the spark he provides. Like that chip on his shoulder, that really counts for something, especially in a program that like is built on diving for loose balls, boxing out, hustling for offensive rebounds. That's a guy that you need to retain next year and yeah, play 20 minutes a game the rest of this year for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the other part of it. Make him as happy as possible because with the way things have happened recently, you wouldn't, I mean, it wouldn't be too hard to believe that he has some different thoughts going through his mind, and I'm sure has been frustrated with some of the fluctuation in his minutes and role. I would do everything possible to make sure he's very pleased with the way that he factors in to this team the rest of the year because totally with you. I would really hate to lose that guy. I think he would be a foundational piece for the next 2 years and just continues to get better and better. I'm a huge fan of everything he brings, and I think the sky's the limit for his potential. That's the thing. Like, you watch him play, and there's just so many tools there, and there's just so much talent that explodes off the screen when he gets it going. Boy, you start to picture like what a senior version of him could look like in terms of some of the scoring numbers he could put up. Great point. Yeah, next year is definitely a consideration in that as well. Let's close it out here talking about this game on Saturday night. Was supposed to be a marquee game on the schedule, one that you were looking forward to right as this team was clicking into place against a national title contender, kind of a where are you at type of litmus test against one of the best teams in the sport. And now Illinois is limping their way into this game, probably going to be a double-digit underdog, unranked now, going up against Duke, who's number 3 in the country. But you look at the metrics, a lot of them think this is the best team in the country, and I've certainly thought that for a lot of this season. I think Auburn is a great case as well, but it's 1A, 1B between those two. This Duke team is pretty terrifying when you look at them, and especially the way Illinois is playing right now, the fact that Illinois is going to miss their only potential matchup for Cooper Flagg now has a broken wrist and will be in sweats on the sideline. Boy, this is a daunting task on Saturday night that you thought was going to be a lot more exciting from the Illinois perspective before all this stuff went down. Still a great opportunity. Boy, talk about something that could completely turn the tide on this Illinois season, going and beating Duke on the national stage Saturday night. But you are going to need to pull a rabbit out of your hat to do it, and a level of play that we haven't seen for a while from Illinois if you want to do that. What are your thoughts heading into this game?
Scared. Not just the number 3 team in the AP poll, not just a 1 seed, not just the number 1 team in KenPom this year, tied for the 4th highest KenPom rating of any team since 1997. Like right now, as of February 20th. Like that's 27, 28 years. That's unbelievable. And it's a team led by a freshman who's leading them in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. And he's what, 6'9". Like Illinois just doesn't have a matchup for that really. It's I'm not too optimistic about this one. I love Illinois' chances in every Big Ten game for the most part. I love the high profile non-conference matchups. I love picking Illinois in those. Not going to be picking Illinois in this one. I think obviously at Madison Square Garden we've had some success there, beating Texas and FAU the past couple years. This one's a different story. This is an Illinois team that's struggling, going against a juggernaut. It's a David and Goliath story. But it would be so Illinois. It would be so just this season for Illinois to take that 5% chance to win and pull this one out somehow. Just get really hot, shoot 45% from 3 for absolutely no reason. But yeah, it's like you start with Duke's defense, and it's just absolutely terrifying. As you said, they got 7-2 Maluach in the paint. Cooper Flagg right with him, and then Tyrese Proctor. They got James Knipple. They got, I mean, Mason Gillis coming off the bench after shooting like 40% at Purdue. They have, is it Isaiah Evans, who was a 5-star, and he's just shooting 45% from 3 off the bench. Like it's just nonstop weapons offensively, which is, I think they're 2nd in the country in offense, and that doesn't even get talked about that much because the defense is just like horrifying. Half the teams they play can't complete a pass against them. It's like it's a football team's defense. Like the biggest team in college basketball, the longest team, they have the seniors, they have the freshmen, and it all compiles into just a juggernaut of a team. And yeah, Illinois is going to have their work cut out for them in this one for sure.
Yeah, this can be tough. It all starts with Cooper Flag. I mean, he's the best player in the country. He's probably going to win National Player of the Year, and I just don't know how you stop him because he's 6'9". He's got all the skill in the world. Oh, by the way, he's their primary ball handler in most actions. They'll screen for him. They'll let him create at the top of the key. Great passer. So if you send two bodies at him, he'll find one of their open shooters, and they shoot it darn well. They're a top 21 three-point shooting team in the country at nearly 38%, and almost everybody they space out around Cooper Flag is a knockdown shooter, with the exception of maybe one guy. And so he'll find those, but he'll also make mid-range shots, which I think he'll get plenty of those opportunities. If they put him in ball screens, he'll get plenty of opportunities to just rise up and shoot it in this game. He's been on fire from three in conference play in the ACC. That is the one caveat you have to have with a lot of these Duke numbers, is that the ACC sucks. The ACC is horrendous. That doesn't take away from how good this team is. I think they'd be killing it in any conference, but they do play terrible basketball teams on most nights. And so maybe some of the numbers can get inflated a little bit, but I mean, you don't need numbers to know what Cooper Flag's able to do. And I just don't know where you go if you're Illinois. I mean, I think you probably start Trey White on him one-on-one, but boy, you got to have a lot of help and you got to pick your poison. I mean, Ivisic is going to have to position himself around the bucket to try and take away some of his drives. I mean, there's not a lot of shooters that you can help off of on this Duke team to really, it just depends. I mean, it's just tough. Like one-on-one, I think he's going to have every opportunity in the world, but that's not the only thing. Like, yeah, this offense is great. I mean, their backcourt, I think, is nothing special, but those guys make shots and are just solid players. I mean, Tyrese Proctor's been there forever. You got another lottery potential pick in Con Knippel who can go score it and is a longer wing. That, yeah, now if you have Trey White on Cooper Flag, or if you have Will Riley or Humrickhouse on him, then you got to find a matchup for him because he's so long and can elevate over you. There's so much size on this team. It's crazy. Illinois, especially if you're playing some smaller guards, it's going to be a really tough stop. I think you just got to try to force as many tougher twos as possible, which is what Illinois wants to do. And hope that they miss some of those shots. Offensively, Illinois is going to have to score in this game, and it's going to be tough to do against this Duke team, but you at least can really space them. So maybe, obviously when Maluak's in there, who's a really good rim protector, is a force in the paint. Illinois doesn't even have Morez healthy, so every lineup Illinois is going to play pretty much is going to have a lot of spacing, a lot of five-out stuff. Tommy's going to be able to pull Maluak away. If Flag's at the five, you can manipulate some of those things. You can find certain matchups to where, I mean, Cooper Flag is such an athletic freak and such an instinctual defender that you got to try and pull him as far away from help position as possible, because even if he's outguarding a shooter in the corner, he can come over help side and block a shot. Like, you just got to figure out ways to kind of manipulate your spacing to try and get those two rim protectors away from things. And probably make a lot of threes, because Duke will give up some threes, and if you can find the right guys and if you can get a little bit of penetration, you can get some shooters. But we know how that's gone for Illinois much of this year. You're probably going to need to make 12, 13 threes to have a chance in this game, and good luck doing that. Although Illinois has shot it a lot better here recently. That is the one silver lining, is I think Illinois is in the mid to upper 30s here over the last 5-6 games. So maybe you have a 40-some% night. That's probably the path I see to Illinois hanging in this game.
Yeah, that's about your only hope offensively. I will say, you kind of mentioned it, bringing Maluak away from the paint, because he's just dominant there. 7'2", going to be a top 10 pick. Him and Flag are going to block any shot from Trey or Kylan when they go in there, most likely. But yeah, bring Maluak out. Maybe hope for just a really good game from Tommy distributing the ball, like we saw against Michigan State. We saw against Northwestern back in December a little bit. I haven't really seen it that much recently because KJ has been bearing the load. But as we talked about like 20 minutes ago, you're talking about KJ. You don't want to see KJ, having the ball for 40 straight minutes. Maybe let Will Riley do his thing offensively. Maybe let Tommy do his thing offensively in this one because that could be your only chance, along with shooting above 30% from three, most likely. But yeah, you hope for foul trouble against some of the freshmen, some dumb mistakes here and there. But at the same time, Illinois is a freshman-led team. Defensively with Flag, like I think the only comparable player we've or Illinois seen was Ace Bailey, I guess. And against Ace Bailey, I think you had Trey White initially. You had Kylan Boswell early in the first half. I think you had Dre checking in for a little bit.
You had Dre start the game on
Oh,
Ace
Dre
Bailey. I
started it.
remember
Okay.
that. I remember
Yeah.
that. I was like, "What is this?" He didn't guard him for a ton of the game, but he started on
They were
him.
switching a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, and then there was a lot of switching going on. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, no, I don't have an answer. I hope the staff has an answer somehow. But yeah, it's just not an ideal situation because even if somehow you limit Flag, they still have good creators in Proctor and James and Knipple he's more of a catch and shoot guy, but he can still do his thing. It's just like I don't you don't see this much in college basketball. A team being led by a freshman in every statistical category and then surrounded by just like 39% three-point shooters, veterans, and at the same time they're a top five team defensively. So it's just yeah, not an ideal matchup. Not gonna play Illinois at a great time considering Illinois is not really healthy. Um, Although the shooting numbers have been a bit better, that's a little encouraging. But yeah, just not a whole lot to point to in this one that makes you super optimistic about Illinois' chances.
Duke's shortest player in their rotation is 6'6". Their rotational guys are 6'6", 6'9", 6'6", 6'6", 6'6". Sorry, Caleb Foster's 6'5". My
Oh, thank
apologies.
God.
He's their shortest player. 6'7", 7'2". I think Malik Brown, their backup big man, transfer from Syracuse, probably won't play in this game. I think he
Yeah,
got
he's been
hurt
out.
here recently. That's the one note. He's a guy that is a really good defender off the bench and is a guy who they run some stuff through when he comes in there. So they'll be missing him, I would think. I haven't checked any updates on that, but I think he got hurt in their last game. Was that maybe Monday night when he left the game with what looked like a semi-serious injury? So there's one silver lining for you, but unfortunately, there's a lot of other really good players on this team, and I think the biggest or the most important guy for Illinois in this game is going to be Tommy, and that's going to be the case in a lot of games, but particularly in this matchup, I think he's going to get a lot of threes. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to pop and shoot against Duke's starting lineup, and I think that's going to be some of your best looks that you can generate against this Duke defense that just flies around and is so long and disruptive. If you can make Maluak uncomfortable and play Tommy outside, maybe get him some looks from three, but also I wouldn't mind seeing some things run through Tommy, knowing that you're going to get that matchup and maybe play him either in the high post or at the top of the key and let him facilitate a little bit more just to take some things off of KJ's plate, because I do really worry about a high turnover game for KJ here. This Duke defense hasn't been like an extremely high turnover defense, but boy, they can deflect a lot of balls, and boy, they can get a lot of steals. And they can just disrupt you and disrupt passing angles, and just the size, I think could bother KJ a little bit, and really even Will too, if you're really relying on him. So I wouldn't mind putting a little more in Tommy's hands, assuming that he's fully healthy again and has overcome the flu bug that he had on Tuesday night. I think he's going to be important as both the facilitator, but also a guy who can knock some shots down for you in some pop situations. But also, he needs to hold his own on the glass as much as possible, because Illinois is going to be struggling without Morez to box out the size of this Duke team, to keep a guy like Maluak off the offensive glass. He has the sixth highest offensive rebound rate in the country at 17%, and Tommy is going to have to box him out defensively, keep him off the offensive glass. That's going to be huge for Illinois. Tommy, at times this year against physical front courts who are really good, has struggled. And in this game, you just cannot have that without Morez in there. He's got to be as physical and tough as ever, battling for rebounds, and try to limit some of those offensive rebounds for Duke as much as possible, give you that presence on the inside. You're probably going to be counting on him to play a lot of minutes coming off an illness, and I'm worried about it. I hate to say like Tommy's going to have to do everything tonight after he barely played and was sick and was on IVs before the game, but he's kind of the key for me. Like he's got to do some things in this game because he's the one matchup that I think Duke could struggle with.
Yeah, it sounds like he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders for this one. But yeah, just like it's because he does offensively. Even if they don't run things through him, like we're kind of talking about, still kind of has to be a presence in the low post a little bit and just give Illinois anything offensively. And then at the same time, he's their only like post big defensively because Morez is gone. Homer Kaus, no offense, is probably going to get bodied by anybody Duke has. Jake Davis as well. Kerry Booth's not going to be playing in this one. So it's like he's kind of their option unless, Kylan Boswell goes off for 20. KJ has a phenomenal game going for 25. Tommy's going to be have to doing a ton in this one. And that's really, I think, one of Illinois' only real paths to success. So I want to ask you this. If Illinois does win this game, I don't even care how they win it. Could be a total fluke. Cooper Flagg slips up for the last 10 minutes like he's done a couple times this year.
Cooper Flagg could be sick and throwing up and miss the game. I don't care. I'll take it.
Maluak pukes on the floor. Cooper Flagg slips on it. Illinois wins. But yeah, if they do win somehow, um, does your season outlook change by a whole lot? Like, I'm not saying if they shoot 60% from three, yeah, we're not going to be seeing that against Michigan and Purdue. How much does your season outlook change if they win this one?
It changes quite a bit. Not to say like, oh, I'm all the way back in. Here comes Illinois to the Final Four after this game. But if you beat Duke and if you actually show up and play like the best version of Illinois, where it looks like every piece is healthy and playing good basketball, and you go on the national stage after everything that's happened over the last month plus and beat this Duke team, I will feel really darn good that this team still has a lot of hope left heading into March. You need to see something. I mean, that's really what it is. Lately, it's just been disappointment after disappointment. You had the nice little 2-game stretch with Minnesota, UCLA, where maybe you're figuring things out. And now you've had Michigan State and Wisconsin. And it just feels like there's no life left and things are spiraling out of control. If you get this win, you've shown that, hey, that ceiling is still inside of us. And this is what we can do. If you're if you're a team that's going to be a 6, 7, 8 seed in the tournament, you're going to have to beat a team like Duke in the first 3 rounds and ultimately make a deep run in the tournament. And if I actually see Illinois beat one of those teams, then why can't they beat anybody in March? Like that, you can see you have evidence in front of you that says, here's what this team is at their best. They're beating one of the best teams in the country. And for me, that would at least tell me, okay, I'm excited to see where this goes in the tournament, because now I know that even with everything that's happened, even without Morez, this team could beat anybody on any given night. That's not to say it'll happen, but it'll prove that it's still in there.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, I would be so bought back in because we haven't seen that since the West Coast trip. Like, I think Oregon was the last real, Oregon was playing at a top 10, top 15 level at that point. Indiana was, I mean, India hasn't been a bubble team the whole year when Illinois beat them, especially. But yeah, I just think if they finally put something together through all the injuries, through all the sicknesses and illnesses and all that stuff, all the off the court stuff, like if they finally put one 40-minute, full 40-minute offensive and defensive production together, I would be so bought back in, especially against a team that's the caliber that Duke is. Is it time for score prediction? Because I kind of just got myself hyped up, even though I don't think that this
I
thing's
was
gonna happen.
I was just about to say, I hate to now turn to score predictions because that was such a nice positive thought to end the episode on. But we are going to predict this game, so I'll let you start. And I don't know if it's going to be quite as positive as that outlook was.
It's not going to be, but my initial prediction was legitimately like a 20-point loss. So now I've talked myself into the 10 to 15 point range. I'll go, I want to say Duke like 73, Illinois 59. Like I don't think it's going to be pretty as much as I just mentioned it being pretty potentially. I think I don't want to say it's another KJ disaster class, but I don't think KJ is going to do too well. I don't love our undersized guards with Boswell and Dre. They're gonna have a lot of tick just based on the team not being super deep. I don't love that considering Duke's entire roster is 6'6" or above. I think Will Riley might get out physical. I think Tommy's still dealing with stuff, and he's going to be the focal point, like we just talked about. So yeah, I'm not super optimistic, but anything can happen. We're getting close to March here, so we'll see.
I think Duke wins by 20. I think Duke wins by 20.
They probably do.
I think this gets away from Illinois. Duke just has too much right now. I think this is a matchup where you really feel the loss of Morez because I think Duke's going to be able to out rebound you now. I think there's going to be some offensive rebound opportunities for them, and I just think they're going to score. I mean, I think they're just going to get what they want. I think Flag will have a nice time here. I mean, Illinois, it almost feels kind of similar to Wisconsin in that I'd be surprised if it's like 35-15 Duke in the first half. Illinois will probably, keep themselves in it for a while, but ultimately it's just going to be too much. Guys are going to be too worn down after the, being in and out. And I just think it kind of comes apart for Illinois late in the game. Duke runs away with the game. 88-68 is my prediction. I think Duke gets it by 20. Illinois finds their way close to 70, and but they can't hold down this Duke team, and that's the other part of it is Duke or not, Cooper Flag or not, Illinois has been pretty bad defensively for 3 weeks now. Been extremely bad, actually. One of the worst teams among tournament caliber teams in the country in defense, and now you're playing this Duke offense. Good luck missing Morez Johnson. I think they get near 90 and blow Illinois out. Unfortunately, that is my prediction. Anything else?
Does Illinois shoot over or under 23% from three-point range?
I think they get over. I think they're around 30.
Okay. That's a silver lining.
I envision similar to Wisconsin. What'd they shoot against Wisconsin? 10 of 30?
Yeah.
I think they'll be like 10 of 32 from 3 or something like that.
All right. Yeah, this is not fun to talk about.
If you shoot 23% from 3 or under, I might need to tack on another 5 to Duke's win total. I mean, how do you stay in the game if you're not shooting it at least decently in this one? I don't know.
No clue.
Cooper Flag would need to be so off that he's 1 for 13 from the floor. I don't know what the path is. It's grim right now. What is the ESP? Is I hate it because it's a lot of times it's not very accurate, but like the ESPN wheel, like the percent chance that they give you to win, how bleak is it for Illinois in this game?
I'll check right now. I know Ken Palm's like Illinois 20% or something.
Because the one last thing I'll bring up here, when's the last time that it was this bleak of an outlook heading into a game under Brad Underwood? It's been so long, and again, there's other factors that
Wisconsin 2 days ago.
Yeah, but not to this Duke level. Like entering that game, especially before you knew about Tommy being sick, it wasn't to this level to where it's like, well, we'll get run out of the gym here. It's been so long since you've entered a game as an Illinois fan and been like, gosh, I think we'll get blown out here. It'd be a miracle to not get absolutely destroyed in this game. It's probably been since Brad Underwood's terrible first 2 teams that you felt that way.
A lot of people felt that way for the Arkansas tournament game in 2023. I don't know.
I had little hope for that game, but I didn't enter it being like, boy, there's no chance we're going to get blown out here because that Arkansas team wasn't good enough to do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't even know.
You probably would have gotten there at some point in the 22-23 season if you played a Duke level team. The thing was you didn't play like a national title contender, historic efficiency team. If you played Duke, if you played this Duke team late February of that year, probably would have been the same. But just in terms of how it's all lined up with the caliber of opponent, where Illinois is at, and just the overall feeling heading into the game, it's been a long time since I've felt this way heading into an Illinois game. It's weird, and it sucks. I don't want it to happen anymore.
Yeah, I think we got to fire Underwood then. It's like this did not happen under John Gross, man.
Oh, it happened a lot under John Gross. There were a lot of nights where you felt like there was no shot for those John Gross teams to win. And the fact that it's only happened once in like 5 years under Underwood is your reminder that you still have it pretty darn good as an Illinois fan with this head coach in charge. Just remember that, please.
John Gross, longest winning streak in the country. Bring him back.
That's true. John Gross having a good year. Good for him. I mean, he seemed like a likable guy, just didn't win. So, is this the year that his Akron team, finally wins in the tournament? Because they're always a 13 seed, and they're always like, well, they might
They
beat
always
whoever
choke
it
in their
is.
conference.
Yeah, that's true. They last year I think they lost in their conference tournament, but they've been a 13 seed two or three times since he's gotten there and have come up a little short. I wonder if this is the year they get that upset in the tournament.
They're really
Luckily,
good. Yeah, I think so.
luckily now Illinois won't be able to play them because they're not going to be a high enough seed or a low enough seed to meet them. So no John
Yeah,
Gross revenge games
we'll run into Chester and Sincere in the 8-9
in
game
the eight
instead.
nine. You know the committee will want to do that, right? Like that, or they'll put Illinois with one of these struggling brands like a Kansas, just another Dickinson matchup, and Bill Self. Like they'll do something like that. But that'll wrap it up for us. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Champagne on Ice. Subscribe to the Field of 68 Podcast Network YouTube channel, and find us wherever else you get your podcast. We will be back next week after the Duke game to see how it goes, talk about it, preview what has now become a pretty important, extremely important home game against the Iowa Hawkeyes next week, because if you lose that one, all bets are off about what Illinois' NCAA outlook looks like. You better win that game, and we'll preview that next week. But until then, hope everybody at least tries to, or for some part, enjoys the game on Saturday night. Hoping for a miracle. Boy, wouldn't it be awesome to be talking about an Illinois win over Duke next week. Enjoy it, everybody. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Champagne on Ice podcast.